Okay, so we're going to start a read aloud. We're going to restart Saving Mr. Terupt, and I'm going to do about 15 minutes each time I do it. I'll do it every weekday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And yeah, I have a timer set. I set it for like 17 minutes for the intro, so when that goes off, I'll stop reading because we do about 15 minutes during read aloud at school. So we're going to restart Saving Mr. Terupt. So it starts in the summer. And we have Peter. All good things must come to an end. And when you're on the receiving side of a really good wedgie, you want the end to show up in a hurry, even if it means having your underwear ripped clean out of your shorts. To say it was a good wedgie would be a serious understatement, though. My tidy whities were so far up my back, I could feel the fruit of the loom tag scratching my neck. My underwear stretched so much that you could have put Jeffrey in there with me. No, it wasn't just a good wedgie. I was the victim of one of the greatest wedgies of all time. One that deserved a place in the Guinness Book of World Records. Not the sort of thing you want to be known for, but if I'm being honest, I'd asked for it. My claim to fame happened at the 2-week summer wrestling camp that Jeffrey and I attended together. That camp was definitely the highlight of my vacation. Mr. T had told us that he'd gone to his first camp as a rising 7th grader, and since we were planning to join the school team in the winter, he encouraged us to do the same and told our parents that it would be a good idea. Mr. T helped us pick the camp and even drove Jeffrey and me there on the day it started. It took place on a college campus I'd never heard of, but featured some of the best coaches in the country. After we were all checked in and settled in our room, Mr. T brought us back to his car and opened the trunk. I've got something for each of you, now that you're officially wrestlers, he said. He pulled out a pair of his old wrestling shoes and handed them to me. These babies aren't used to losing matches, so you best take care of them, he told me. I couldn't even get a thank you out of my mouth. I hold those shoes like Jessica cradles her books. He passed his old headgear on to Jeffrey, who couldn't manage to say anything either. If you pay attention, I know you'll learn plenty, Mr. T promised us. I discovered some of my best moves at camp. Have fun, work hard, and stick together. And stay out of trouble, he added, looking at me. He closed the trunk and climbed into his car. I'll see you in 10 days. Then he drove away. I did a pretty good job of following his advice. I paid attention, worked hard, and stuck with Jeffrey. But I did manage to get myself in a little bit of trouble. I couldn't help it. One of my favorite parts of camp was the dorm. I'd never been away from home like this before. It was great. There was no one harping on us to clean our room. Jeffrey and I kept the place as messy as we wanted. It was also really cool having other kids in the dorm with us. There were 10 rooms in our hall, 20 boys total. And Jeffrey and I were the youngest. I used to think the bathroom at school was the best place for messing around, but the dorm was heaven. You could get away with murder. We were at our morning session, sitting along the mats and changing into our wrestling shoes, when Max, one of the kids a few doors down from Jeffrey and me, started freaking out. Ew! He yelled, what the heck? He yanked his shoe off and tipped it over. Shampoo dripped from inside it. Max tossed his sneaker aside, ripped his sock off, and chucked it at Matt, who was cracking up. Matt and his roommate Josh were the oldest kids on our floor, which made them the alpha males, or so they thought. I wouldn't say they were mean, but they definitely liked pulling pranks and picking on the younger kids in the pack. They slapped high fives and kept laughing their heads off. Poor Max had no choice but to wrestle that session in his bare feet. By the end of practice, they were covered in so many mat burns, he could hardly walk. Let the wars begin, I thought. Jeffrey must have seen my wheels spinning. Don't even think about it, Peter, he warned me. Remember what Terupt told you? I might have taken his advice, but later that night, Matt left me with no choice but to get involved. I had just finished in the shower and went to grab my towel, but it was gone. Someone had swiped it when I wasn't looking and had left me with a tiny little washcloth in its place. I was soaking wet, but what could I do? I held the washcloth in front of my waist like a matador and booked it down the hall. My front was covered, but my naked butt shone like a full moon. I thought I was going to make it, but when I reached my room, I found the door locked. I pounded on it. Jeffrey! I yelled. No answer. Then I heard a door at the end of the hall open and close. I didn't even have to look. I knew it was them. Hey, nice butt, Josh yelled, and cute towel. Perfect for a little guy like you. I pulled the washcloth tight to my front. Some jerk took mine and left me with this, I said. You don't say, and now you're locked out. Boy, that stinks, he teased. Shut up, I said. Tough words from a naked boy. Out of the way, little man, Matt said, shoving me as the two of them passed by. The ladies await. It's time for Matt's gun show. He flexed his biceps and strutted toward the exit. There happened to be a field hockey camp also taking place at the college, so there were girls everywhere. One thing I know about girls is that they always go for bigger, older-looking guys, and for once, That was a relief. Thanks to the girls, Matt and Josh didn't have time to torture me at the moment. Jeffrey showed up a few minutes later carrying a bag of chips from the vending machine. "Whoa, where's your towel?" he said. "Just let me in." I'd gone from relieved to annoyed. While Mr. Biceps was outside schmoozing with the ladies, I rounded up Max and a few of the other guys on our floor. Even after I told him what they'd done to me, Jeffrey vowed that he was staying out of it. That was fine, but I wasn't going to sit back and do nothing. It was time to get even. Those two had messed with the wrong kid. At 11 o'clock, every camper had to be in his room for attendance check and lights out, including the two big shots. At 11:15, a group of us snuck out and met in the bathroom. Max and I found the biggest trash barrel in the dorm and stuck it in the shower. It took us more than 5 minutes to fill that sucker with water. The thing must have weighed a gazillion pounds. But we lugged it down the hall and leaned it against Matt and Josh's door. Then we knocked. Matt must have been just on the other side because he opened it immediately. I was still standing there when the barrel fell and the wave of water rushed into his room like a tsunami, soaking him and drenching everything they had on the floor. "You're dead meat, little man!" I took off down the hall. Matt came flying after me. "Jeffrey!" I yelled. He opened up just in time. I dove into our room and Jeffrey slammed and locked the door behind me. The next morning at session, all the guys kept asking Matt and Josh why their stuff was wet. "Did you get caught in a rainstorm?" Max teased. Jeffrey and I stayed on the far side of the mat, keeping as much distance between ourselves and Matt and Josh as we could. Still, it was only a matter of time. It was just after lunch in the middle of the quad when Matt grabbed me. He lifted me high above his head by the waistband of my underwear as if he were doing shoulder presses. The field hockey girls were watching. "Look!" one yelled. "Oh my gosh!" cried another. Every girl in the quad started laughing and pointing at me. "Put me down!" I said, kicking and squirming. "Yeah, and who's gonna make me?" Matt challenged. That was what I wanted to know. My underwear were already in my armpits. I could hear it ripping. And believe me, I felt it. My underwear wasn't the only thing ripping. "I'm warning you," I said. "I'd like to see you do something about it," he said. "You really should be careful what you wish for." Turns out, Jeffrey is even crazier than I am. Mr. T didn't have any reason to worry. There was no doubt about us sticking together. That's just how it was when it came to the old gang. Jeffrey. I swore I wasn't going to get involved in Peter's pranks at wrestling camp. I was there to learn, and I was determined to stay out of trouble. But trouble and Peter are drawn to each other like magnets. And sometimes you're guilty by association, which is what happened to me. Things were fine in the beginning. Coach Terupt dropped us off at camp, and before he left, he gave us these incredible gifts. Peter got a pair of his old shoes, and I got his headgear. I spent all of the first day fiddling with the straps, adjusting them so it fit me perfectly. Just putting it on made me feel like a serious wrestler, which I'd become. I remember Terupt telling us about wanting to be the best when he was a kid, and that fire had been lit in my belly. I couldn't wait to wrestle for the school team. My goal was to win every single match this season. I understood camp was important preparation if I truly wanted to make that happen, so I was focused at the sessions and learning a lot, as Terupt had promised we would. One day, we spent 2 hours going over a position called out the back door. Imagine being on your hands and knees with your opponent draped across you, facing in the opposite direction and reaching for your ankles. You can easily find yourself like this in a match, especially if you take a shot and your opponent sprawls his legs back and falls on you. From there, if you scoot forward and pick your head up off the mat, you will come out between your opponent's legs, and this is called coming out the back door. Believe it or not, there are about 1 million different ways to finish your move, and things that can happen from there, and we studied a bunch of them. Later that night, I was sitting in our dorm room, writing down everything we had learned. If you write it down, then you'll have a better chance of remembering it when wrestling season rolls around, which is when you want to be able to execute all of those new moves, Coach Terupt had said. I was mid-sentence when all of a sudden there was this big ruckus out in the hall. I wasn't going to get involved, but then I heard Matt yelling and Peter calling my name. I hurried over to our door and yanked it open. Peter dove inside our room. I saw Matt, hot on his tail, charging after him like an angry bull. You could hear the water squishing and sloshing about in his sneakers with every step he took. I slammed our door and locked it just in time. A barrage of fists rattled on the other side. "You twerps can run, but you can't hide," Matt warned. I turned to Peter. "What'd you do?" "Dumped a little water in his room." "It must have been a lot of water," I said. "Matt's soaking wet." Peter grinned from ear to ear. "Really?" "Yeah, and now you've got me involved. I didn't sign up to be your bodyguard. I didn't want you missing out on all the fun, that's all." Thanks to Peter's shenanigans, the backdoor move we learned in practice wasn't the only one we had to perfect. Matt and Josh were determined to get to get us. So the next day, we snuck out the back door of the dorm, in and out of the gym, and into the dining hall. Those two dummies hadn't caught on, and I was beginning to think we would survive the rest of camp without facing them. But then Peter had a brain fart and forgot to use our secret exit after lunch. Matt was there to grab him as soon as he walked out of the building. I wanted to kill Peter for involving me, but I couldn't leave my friend hanging in that position. And he was hanging by his underwear. There was a huge crowd of onlookers pointing and snickering at the sight. I wondered which was hurting Peter more, his pride or his crack. The squeals came from all the field hockey girls after I hit my best move of the week. I ran over and yanked Matt's shorts all the way down to his ankles. For such a tough guy, he sure sported girly boxers. There were hearts all over them. Peter fell to the ground and we took off. Matt tried chasing after us, but he tripped on his shorts and face planted. The place erupted in laughter. The rest of camp went without incident. Even though Peter and I were the youngest kids there, Matt and Josh knew not to mess with us. We packed a solid 1-2 punch. Camp was definitely the best part of my summer, full of crazy memories, thanks to Peter, and tons of new techniques that I couldn't wait to try. I was going to score a lot of takedowns with my new backdoor finishes. I was ready for 7th grade and a new phase of my life as I entered junior high. Of course, I also wanted to catch up with everyone else. Peter was the only one I'd seen since the end of 6th grade. I wonder how Luke's summer had gone and how Jessica and Lexi and Danielle were doing, and Anna especially. I was excited to tell her everything that my baby brother could do now. Asher was nearing his 1st birthday. My family decided we'd celebrate it on the day I found him abandoned by the side of the road. Now, not only was he now pulling himself to his feet more and more and getting better and better at his wrestling stance, but he was also beginning to say a few words. He could say Dada and Mama, and Jeffrey came out as Ree. He liked to stand at our sliding door and bang his hands on it. His fingerprints were all over the glass, but there was one afternoon when I was with him that he stopped in the middle of his drumming and pointed outside. My. I looked to see what he was pointing at. There was nothing out there, but he kept gesturing toward the old oak tree with its tire swing gently swaying in the breeze. My. I had no idea what he was trying to say. Maybe Anna would be able to help me figure it out. All right, so we will hear from Jessica on Monday. So I will still do the read-alouds if you guys want to listen to them over spring break to have something to do, but we won't do lightning thief and questions. I don't want you guys to have to worry about that. So we'll still do read-alouds. I'll post those, and we'll still do like hangouts and everything. So we'll hear from Jessica on Monday.